In this segment, we're going to talk about analyzing business markets and mostly how they differ from the consumer market. You may not be aware of this, but if you look at the GDP, the gross national product in the United States, 1/3 of business transactions are conducted with the US government, from the national government all the way to the state and community governments. So 1/3 of all purchases go into our running of our environment, of our country, and of our communities. That's a big portion of the market, of sales. And then on top of that, you have all the business to business sales that are going to take close to another fourth to a little bit more than a fourth of the national GDP. And that leaves about 55% of sales are to consumers. Everything else is going into the business market. So this is a very significant market. What is organizational buying? Basically, it's all the organizations that acquire goods and services that they use in production of other products or services that are sold, rented, or supplied to other people. So some of the characteristics of business markets: they are fewer but larger buyers. They have a close supplier-customer relationship. The purchasing becomes more professional and less emotional. There are multiple influences on the buying process. There are multiple sales calls. The demand is derived. In other words, it is dependent on how much other people are buying, and it fluctuates with the economy based on what consumers are buying. Also, the business market is characterized by geographically concentrated buyers as we develop centers of commerce around certain types of businesses. For example, we talk about Silicon Valley, right? So where all the tech startups are. And then we have the steel industry. So Pennsylvania and Eastern Ohio are very heavy in that steel industry, part of New York State. Then we have the coal industry. So a lot of industries are concentrated, and so we have similar buyers in one area. And then it's the direct purchase. You're not going through multiple buyers to make that decision. So we have 3 buying situations. A straight rebuy: you've bought it many times and it's probably on an automatic reorder. A modified rebuy, where you need to modify quantities or you may reconsider a brand or two. And then a new task, where you are pretty much starting from no experience in that product market and you're doing a lot of research and trying to decide who the best seller is out there for your product. I mentioned earlier that the decision is made differently, right? So the buying center comes into play, where you have a variety of people participating in that purchase process. For example, you have the initiators. You have someone who says, we need to order such and such. You have the users, and those could be, like, for example, office supplies. All of the staff that uses up those office supplies when it's running low, it would trigger a reorder. You have influencers, you have deciders, you have approvers, you have buyers, and you have gatekeepers. You have people in place to protect the organization from being overrun by a large number of purchasing agents. So the buying process is similar to the consumer process, but there's a few extra steps. So we all start with there's a problem. We recognize there's a problem, and that problem then is described. So we create a general need description. Then we study up and come up with product specifications. Then we search for suppliers that would be able to fill those specifications. And typically in the business environment, business to business sales, we search for at least two suppliers, especially if the product is fairly similar from one supplier to the other. You could ask for proposals. Then you would select the supplier and place the order. Then you can set it up as a routine specification, and then you review the performance of the product. You review the performance of the supplier to decide if you want to continue working with that supplier or not. We have targeting within the business centers. So who are the major decision participants? Who has the biggest influence? And what evaluation criteria do they use? Then that procurement process, you're looking for the highest benefit package. So economic, technical, service, social, and what are the costs? So this is a buying grid framework that would help you think through whether it's a new task, modified rebuy, or straight rebuy, and the steps. So how much do they look into the sales? So a little bit more in depth, the problem recognition. Someone in the company recognizes a problem. They need something. They're told that they need something that can be met by acquiring a good or service. That general need description and product specification. Then you're looking at what are the required quantities, the general characteristics, and are there technical specifications that need to be taken into account. Then the supplier search, you're looking at catalogs. Does your organization already have buying alliances? Are there private exchanges, or are there vertical markets, pure play auctions? How are you going to go about finding those suppliers? Today, more and more, we work with hubs of sales of similar products. And so e-procurement, in other words, putting out a request for proposals and doing all of this electronically, has taken the place of phone calls and all of that. 75% of business buyers indicated that they use the internet to make at least some of their purchases now. If you get a chance, click through on the slides that I put online. This is a group purchasing organization, so you could look a little bit into what that looks like. And then this is a sample government contract, and this one specifically is contracting resources to small businesses. And you can get a feel for what those procurements could be like. So the stages in the buying process, we do the proposal solicitation, then we select the best supplier. And this is an example of a vendor analysis where you assign importance weights based on attributes like price, supplier reputation, product service reliability, etc. And then you look at rating scores for a vendor, and you calculate a score. You would go through this same process for multiple vendors and then decide between the vendors that have the highest scores. You're also looking for price pressure points and what you can do to put those price advantages on your side. And a lot of that has to do with how many suppliers are there. Order and routine specifications, you may want to be able to put a product on an automatic rebuy. And then you want to do performance reviews periodically of those chosen suppliers. In marketing, then we need to pay close attention to developing marketing programs that are appropriate and effective with business to business, right? So, what is the total problem solution from one seller compared to another, and how would you go about making those choices? A lot of times we make the choices in an organization based on the branding activities and the communication that is out there that we run into, that we learn to trust and rely on. So that buyer-supplier relationship could be very elaborate, or it could be quite bare bones. It really depends on the complexity of the purchase, complexity of the product, and the availability of the product on the market as well. But just like in the consumer market, the customer is king. You want to treat the customer as well as you can and keep that relationship built up very strong. So this is to business market, and next week we will be talking about the global market.